Chapter 19. Dinner was a strange affair. It was served in what I gathered was the Egyptian style from Esh's childhood, with a single bowl in the center of the table, from which all of us ate with our fingers. Between courses, we washed our hands in bowls of water by our places, scented with flowers I was fairly sure didn't exist in the world I knew. We ate fish caught fresh from the sea, roots and seaweed, and a stew of lentils that was made with what seemed like dozens of spices, and which tasted absolutely divine. I saw no servants. The bowls appeared and disappeared on their own, and I wondered if Esh lived here entirely alone. Our hostess refused to speak of my magic over dinner, or after it. She kept Damon back after the meal, but I was sent away. I protested, only to receive a glare that seemed liable to melt my bones if I were on the receiving end of it for too long. I left hastily, and was guided by helpful breezes to a room with a little mat on the floor. Robes to sleep in were folded neatly on top, and a copper tub filled with hot water appeared suddenly in the corner, only to disappear promptly once I was done bathing. I lay awake for what felt like hours, waiting for Damon's footsteps so that I might ask him what Esh had wanted. I heard nothing, however, and despite my best efforts, I fell into one of the most vivid memories I had seen yet. Tarek, unleashing the spell that had nearly ended my life. It was amazing how much younger he looked, how heavily the years could weigh against a person even when they did not age. I tried to study his face, but instead I relived the moment over and over. In horror, I realized that up until the moment the spell left his fingertips, I had not believed he could hurt me. When I saw at last that he could, that he was powerful enough, it was too late, and I had only a split second of horror, with the sure knowledge that I was going to die. It was amazing how long a split second could last. I lay trapped in that moment until a hand on my shoulder shook me awake in the darkness. I sat up with a gulp of sea air and found Esh staring down at me with something like pity. "Come along," she said briskly. "Why? To learn magic, girl. What else?" She disappeared out the door and I hurried to catch up. Robes hiked up in my hands. The winds from the ocean were so strong that it took both of us to push our way out of the double doors, and the wind promptly took the door and flung it against the side of the building with a bang. It was viciously cold, salt spray whipping at my hair and plastering the robes to my skin. And then Esh turned to look at me, and there was a moment of calm in the storm. It is one thing to have an affinity for death, to touch a single life and guide it into the dark. It is another thing to change something as vast as the wind or the ocean without even a gesture. Even knowing how powerful and ancient Esh was, it made me shiver. "So what is it you want first?" She was watching me closely, as if to catch a lie. "Your magic or your memories?" I was shivering violently. "Neither. I want no more of that." My temper broke. "Why not?" I demanded. "For many reasons, some of which I have already told you." Her brows raised, and she sighed. "Not least of all that it's impossible." "It isn't impossible," I said fiercely. "Nothing in magic is impossible. If no one will help me do this, I will do it myself." I wasn't best pleased to see her smile. "What? In some ways, you are hardly recognizable." Esh folded her arms inside her sleeves, still smiling. "And in some ways, you haven't changed in the slightest. You were never one to let anything stand between you and a goal." It was impossible to miss the warning in her voice, and I felt it wash over me like a chill. Where others might have left such a sideways reminder stand on its own, however, Esh was not one to shrink from hard truths. "So you had best make very sure, Nicola, that the goals you pursue are worth pursuing, because you are likely to achieve them. Remember what happened the last time you did such a thing." I looked away from her, out at the sea. "I know what happened," I said quietly, "but I don't remember it." "You will." There was definitely pity in her gaze now. "I will unchain your memories first, for they are creeping into your mind now." "Aren't they?" I nodded. It took a moment to find words. "They come when I sleep." Sleep. Her smile was knowing. A strange place, the sleeping mind. "But do not fear. The memories are over and done with. The power they have is only what you give them." She laughed at my sour expression. "I forgot you were never one for platitudes. For all that you became, young one, I've missed you." "Why?" My voice was high, lost. This was the first good thing I'd had to grasp it from my past. Someone missed me, someone who wasn't Philip. The thought of him still made me feel uncomfortable. Esh took her time in answering. "You did magic as naturally as you breathed," she said finally. Her eyes were focused on some point beyond me, something long ago. "You had a talent like none I'd seen, and no fear in it. I've never had time for fear in those I trained." She shook her head. "And you hated injustice. There was nothing you could bear less than for an innocent to be hurt." The words were like a blow. That turned out well. It turned out how it often turns out. Esh gave a rueful smile, full of 5,000 years of experience. Let passion overrule justice, and everything will fester. Yes, you don't like platitudes, but that one is true. How many freedom fighters turn into the very thing they hate? How many, spurred by injustice, set unimaginable cruelty loose in the world? More than you would think. Your problem, Nicola, was always that passion you could not bear in action or indecision. Even in yourself. You leapt to conclusions, and from conclusions to action, too quickly. You had a silver tongue, you always did, and that only made it worse. You became accustomed to convincing anyone of anything, and when you failed at the assembly, you did not take it well. Why did I do it? The words spilled out of me. Just tell me. I don't want to remember it. Just tell me why. I don't know, Ash admitted. I truly don't. I know the words you spoke at the assembly, when you said we would be hunted, that we would be culled like animals. But I don't know if you believed those words. It was a long road that set you on the path to what you did, and you had already been walking it for many years. If you came here for easy answers or easy assurances, I can give you none. I bowed my head. Nor can I shield you from what you are and what you were, she reminded me. But nor should I you think only of what you stand to lose when you have your memories back. But why is that? Why do you not think of what you stand to gain? If you destroy your magic, think of what else you must give up, your immortality. Her voice turned amused. And yon druid. My cheeks flamed as I looked around at her, and she gave a delighted laugh. That isn't, it's not, you aren't understanding. I broke off and tried to gather my composure. Though it would pain me to give up such a friendship, I must think of the greater good. Oh, she mimicked a Scots brogue with frightening accuracy before returning to her normal speech. Well, then, shall we begin? Just the memories first? I asked quietly. And you'll leave the block on my magic in place? Yes, though reluctant, she nodded. There will be turmoil when the memories are released. Perhaps it is best that you do not have your powers at that moment. Now come here, and let me see what they did to you. I stood obediently while her mind looked through my own. Unlike Damon's spell, which came with the rustling of leaves and the smell of greenery, Ash's was pure sorcery, and it gave me a bit of a headache. She did not put her hands on me, but I could feel her in my head all the same. At length she shook her head. Now there's a puzzle. What is? No one has known where you were all these years. She gave a sigh. Of course, most people believed Tarek had killed you, so they weren't looking. Most people, you didn't. No, she said shortly. She did not seem inclined to explain. She gestured to my head. I thought that when I saw the spell, I would know who had done this to you. But there are only more questions. Most of those spells were made by different people. What? The blocks. I thought there would be one. I thought you had been wiped and set loose again, wandering until you remembered who you were. Not so. You were passed from place to place. Your mind and your magic blocked every time you began to remember yourself. I'm guessing, anyway. It happened many times. What? How many? 50, maybe. More, she considered. Well, no wonder the druid wanted nothing to do with releasing it. This will be a trick, and no mistake. Still, we might as well begin. And then her voice changed. Ah, Philip, I wondered when you would show up. My head jerked around. There he was, Julius or Philip, I didn't know which, handsome and composed. The journey to the island had clearly drained him, but there was power crackling in the air all around him. Who is that? I asked Ash quietly. I recognize him, but I don't know why. Philip Allaire. She didn't take her eyes off him. Your former lover, and the one who's been leading a cult in your name ever since Tarek defeated you.